Babs, that shit crazy. Jamie on the beat, boy.
People, this is the Trophy Room. It is Friday, August 13th. Thanks for hanging out with us, spending your day with us. Today, we have more confusion from America's favorite team. Celebrities upset about paparazzi, and are we buying or selling what Urban Meyer is telling us? Wherever you're listening to the podcast, please go give us a 5-star review. It would help out a ton. Get a screenshot, share us on the story. I'm your host, Brett Hammer, alongside a man that hates chain smoking as much as he hates people that can't stop making excuses. That's Jaxon Garlitz. Go find him on YouTube. Jaxon Garlitz with an X instead of CKS. You can find me on Instagram at BHammerTime with the extra E. And we're also on YouTube. That's Trophy Room Radio on YouTube. So if you want to listen to the podcast there, go for it. Jaxon, how are we?
We're fine. When it comes to chain smoking, I'm going to put out one sentence and then I won't say anything else and we can start the podcast off. But let's just say I find it highly amusing when doctors that are overweight counsel their patients on what they should eat, and I find it beyond amusing when I see nurses taking smoke breaks in between helping patients with lung cancer. Let's just say that I find that highly amusing. That's it.
I find it highly ironic because it's like, would you ever go to a personal trainer who was like 400 pounds overweight? And I'm not talking like he's big because he lifts a lot. I'm talking about like he's just straight up overweight and he can't get up out of a chair. Because I remember in high school, we like, bless his heart, Mr. Johnson, but we had this gym teacher. Homeboy was a big dude. And I'm just like, I didn't realize that at the time, but I'm like, how are you going to be a gym teacher when you you can't move? I'm never going to hire a personal trainer who weighs that much, but I'll go in to see a doctor who doesn't know how to take care of his lungs, but he's going to tell me how to take care of the rest of my body. That doesn't make any sense.
It's wacky. It's hilarious. There's always that guy in the family, right? Who is like obsessed with making money, right? Uncle Jerry or something or other. And he's like trying to tell you how to make money. And you're looking at the car he's driving outside and you're like, I don't think that's the car you chose. I think that was the only car on the lot that you could afford. That kind of thing, right? It's like when I hear poor people talk about like how to make money. I worked at Fidelity for a little bit, handled like really high dollar amounts for people that have the stupidest amounts of money that I've ever seen. These people weren't asking poor people how to make money. Like, when you go to college, do you go to college to listen to the professor, right, to teach you things, or do you go to college to hear the students try to teach the professor? Right? It's one of the most entertaining things about like the world we live in today is the idea that like the students are out here canceling professors. And it's like, that professor has been doing this longer than you've been alive. Yeah. Right. And trust me, I'm not somebody who likes arguments to authority. And I think there are plenty of stupid college professors. But like, it's just funny. People these days really do think that they have an idea and nobody's ever thought of it before. Nobody's like, they are the first ones to ever have an idea or have an original thought. And not only that, like, you shouldn't care what other people think of you when they're incorrect. It's a totally different thing when it's like, I'm sorry, if you majored in finance, you should be in finance. I don't want you doing open heart surgery. And when you're a nurse or a doctor and you're overweight or you're smoking, I have a really hard time thinking that you're going to know how to help me with lung cancer. I'm sorry. I don't believe you.
Yeah, it is what it is. People who chase money piss me off. People who chase money but don't actually want to work for the money piss me off even more. But that is a separate story for a separate time. But I told you I would tell you this story. So you texted me. I guess I'll just tell the story first because that'll allude into the story. So I obviously work for BYU TV. I work for BYU Sports Nation. I work in the control room. And I roll into work, and usually I run the graphics. So anything that's on the screen, I put that up there. And it's like a high pace, like working on live TV is a very high pace environment, obviously. Like you have 2 to 3 seconds before what you're supposed to do turns into a mistake that's a has-been. And so usually I don't work on the production crew. I'm moving over there, like hopefully I'm moving it up in that direction. But anyway, I don't work on production. But production, like basically they come in before the show, like 3 hours before, and they basically script everything, write everything, pull together all the topics that they're going to do before the show starts. I roll in and I sit at my desk for probably an hour and 20 minutes, run through all the graphics, make sure they all look good. And my producer comes in. He comes in probably 5 to 10 minutes, or actually his assistant comes in like 5-10 minutes before before we're supposed to go live. And he goes, "All right, we're going to scrap everything that we have planned for the show today." And I'm like, "Wait, like, are you kidding?" And he's like, "No, I'm dead serious." So we obviously, like, we cover everything BYU, and I promise this comes back to a point that applies to everyone. So you know how we live in a world that social media essentially, the internet basically controls the market. The internet is the market. And so BYU football comes out this morning and they tweet out just a picture of emoji eyes. That's it. And the world we live in, 2021, if a social media post doesn't have 110% context, we immediately take it out of proportion and lose our minds because we don't know what it means when it really could mean nothing. In this case, we were sitting around 10 minutes before the show starts trying to figure out like what this means, because like we work for BYU and we want to know what BYU is saying so that way we can put it in proper context. And so we're also all actually out.
Like in addition to what you're saying, like for those of you who aren't BYU fans, BYU also announced today that they were setting up a series with Miami that they're playing. And so a lot of people were like talking about maybe this is what they were doing, because I saw that same tweet and I was like, what? Like who's screwing around on the phone that has access to the BYU Twitter? And when we saw that, I was like, maybe this is it, which seems like a really weird thing to like put eyes out there for. But it was like, maybe this is a BYU Miami announcement.
So I'm sitting in the control room, and the assistant producer, the line director, he goes, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're gonna be like scheduling Notre Dame. I think that's what the big news is." And I'm like, "Okay, bet." So then our producer comes in, and he walks in, and he's like, "Okay, so we're scrapping everything that we have planned for the show," which means all the graphics that we had planned, and graphics take like hours to get all ready together. We scrapped a bunch of those, and then we had to get rid of someone we had for an interview. Call another guy. We had to call one of our BYU TV analysts, Blaine Fowler, call him 5 minutes before the show starts. Homeboy actually pulled his car over, was on the side of the road, just on Zoom, on live TV with us. It was wild. But anyway, he comes down and he's like, we're like, "So like, what's the news?" Because he obviously knew. And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's just that BYU is like getting a sponsorship with Built Bar." And I'm like, "Are you serious? You oversold us, BYU, on..." And let me make things clear. So you pointed out BYU did schedule. So we come in, we scrap the entire show. We do a new show all based. And here was the other thing. We couldn't really do it. We couldn't release that news until BYU released it. And they obviously hadn't yet. So we knew this, but we couldn't put that on TV because nobody else knew. They hadn't officially announced it yet. So in the middle of our first segment, in the middle of the A block, they send us that video that everyone is now seeing circulating where they're like, "Oh, like these kids are now," which we'll explain to in a second. But that video that everyone has seen, we got that 10 minutes into our show. And they're like, "Yeah, we want you to run this." And we're like, "Okay, well, you don't understand." Like, so we're running at like 110 miles an hour. And we find out we're all like, everybody in there is pissed because we're like, BYU's like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be really cool. All the fans are gonna be really excited." And my producer and the talent, they're all like, literally no one's gonna care. Like tweeting eyes and freaking people out, that is not gonna be a big deal to anyone. So like the fact that you think it is, like we're not. And then they wanted us to have the CEO on the show, and we're just like, dude, like we're not gonna do that. Like this isn't a commercial.
Explain what Built Bar is for those who don't know what it is.
That's true. So Built Bar is literally just a protein bar company, and like they're actually pretty good protein bars. I've had one.
My wife loves them.
They're really good. I don't know how much sugar is in them. Maybe that's why they taste so much better than all other protein bars, but they do taste really good. So BYU is like being sponsored by now, and that was what the whole announcement was with the eyes, that BYU football is now sponsored by Built Bar. And BYU thought everyone was going to think this was really cool, and I was like, no, this is stupid. So we run through, we do our whole show. It should have been a mess, but it wasn't, because we're all the bomb at BYU TV, and we killed it. And then literally as we were running, like at 11 o'clock, we told Master to take it. It goes to a new show. Literally right after we went off the air, we get a confirmation from Brett McMurphy, who's a big college football writer, and he goes, "Yeah, so BYU has scheduled Miami for 2026 and 2028, I think." And I was just like, are you serious? So there actually was big news, And that's not what you were telling everyone about. You oversold us on something that was totally not. I mean, it was cool, and we'll talk about it here in a second, but it was just, work was a mess today, and I was so upset with BYU football social media account for making us think something big was coming, and then something not that big came, and then something big did come, but that wasn't what you were trying to sell to us in the first place. So I was just like, look, somebody needs to run y'all social media, because you don't get what the internet wants.
I nominate Brett Hammer to run BYU Twitter.
That's right.
That'd be freaking hilarious.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, whoever runs Twitter for BYU Sports Nation is honestly genius. So here's the story. So the thing that BYU was tweeting out was they sent out this video of basically the whole team was sitting in the film room. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but basically the Built Bar CEO was in there, and essentially he tells this one walk-on, he's like, hey, we're going to pay for your tuition. Everyone freaks out. And then he calls up another walk-on, and he's like, hey, we're going to pay for your tuition as well. And then that guy sits down, and then they have he said, actually, you know what? Every walk-on stand up. He said, we want to pay for all of your tuition. And because of NIL, they can now do that. So that's what's going on. And then I can't remember where I was taking this, but essentially, wow, completely lost my train of thought.
So basically what Brett's trying to say here is what happened is Built Bar, this company, they decided that they were going to sponsor BYU athletics, and they were going to partner with their NIL program, which is the method they're able to use to pay the players now. For doing things for them. For example, one of the conditions is that they need to have like the logo on their practice helmets. I think was one of the conditions
really?
as well. And they're gonna do like promotions. They're gonna be at different like experience events for them. And the cool thing, I think the thing that like was actually big that like is something that we haven't seen before, and it's one of the benefits now that NIL is in place, is that beforehand, there was a certain amount of scholarships that were paid for by the university. And the university was like, here's free college, right? And like, we'll take care of this aspect of your life. Now, with NIL, those who walk onto the team and don't have scholarships, those will be taken care of by Built Bar. So Built Bar is actually going to pay so that every single member of the BYU football team is going to school for free, which is actually, it's not like earth-shattering, right? But it's something that's super new and something you would have never seen. You would have never seen that before today.
No, because it would have been highly illegal.
Extremely.
First of all, for anyone who doesn't go to BYU probably has some of the cheapest tuition out there for a private university. Just
if you remember
FYI.
the church.
Yes, but like most people, like there's not that many kids. Even if you're not a member, like it's still pretty cheap. Because like I used to live at Penn State, and Penn State is can be like $20,000 a semester sometimes.
Sheesh.
So a lot of these big time universities are expensive. Built Bar is getting off comparatively well. Granted, like I did the math, and it's still like probably close to like $800,000 when you can figure it all in. And that's not to say that there's probably not a couple extra bucks being thrown in there. But what I was gonna say was BYU Sports Nation. You ever watch The Office?
Yeah.
You know that episode where Michael Scott says that he's gonna pay for all these kids' college and stuff?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? So BYU Sports Nation, our page, they tweeted out that video today, except they had the Built Bar CEO over the face of Michael Scott, and they just basically tweeted out like, it was funny because they related that, except actually all of these kids are going to college for free, and it's just funny. So whoever runs BYU Sports Nation social media account, y'all do a great job. But yeah, so it is cool because I do feel like when the whole NIL thing came out, we built this narrative that we're all really afraid that college sports were going to go down the drain and that everything was going to be toxic and that everything was ruined. And I'm not saying NIL is perfect, and I do think there are some things that are a little bit suspect about it. But if you think that Built Bar, first of all, Built Bar, as far as I'm aware, like they're not that big outside of Utah and the West Coast. I'm sure they are a national brand, but I don't ever remember seeing them on the East Coast. I'm sure Built Bar is not the only company that's going to come in here, because even if they weren't doing advertising, the amount of free exposure that Built Bar just got from doing this whole thing. Like they're like, I saw national stories about this video, and we broke the news this morning at 10 a.m. or at 11 Eastern, or yeah, no, 11 Mountain Time. So they got so much free exposure. They're going to get so much more. And it is cool to see all these kids now get free college. But if you think that they're the only company that's about to do this, at other companies, you're going to see this and raise it. And hopefully, my hope is that's going to mean more kids getting more free college.
Well, and here's the thing. Like you said, a lot of people had really negative impressions of NIL. I didn't have a negative impression of NIL per se, like of players getting paid. My problem was if universities began to pay players, I personally would have a problem with that, because then you have this thing where it's like, now you have certain universities with a certain athletic budget that now outcompete, right? That I would have a problem with, where I like, obviously, like the Clemson quarterback, right, who is going to be in like the Dr. Pepper commercials, like Dr. Pepper, they could sponsor anybody in the nation, right? That's not specifically a Clemson thing. So I would have had a problem with like the universities paying them. Here's what I love. What's the statistic, Brett, do you know, of NFL players who, once they leave the NFL, are bankrupt? Do you know that statistic?
It's 33%.
So 33%. And do you know like the time range, or is it just in general?
I don't know how long it takes for them to go bankrupt, but the average player spends about 3 to 4 years in the league before they're completely out of it. I believe that does include practice squad players. Obviously, like a lot of the main guys you see aren't the majority, which is why that statistic is the way that it is.
So this study is dated, right? But Sports Illustrated estimated in 2009 that 78% of NFL players went broke up to that point within 2 years.
Okay, well, I was wrong.
Well, actually, like yours might be more updated, because I think a lot has like come out in terms of like helping players not be broke, right? And a lot of like these things like name, image, likeness, right, for players generating money that's not just from the team. But really, here's my thing that I actually really applaud BYU for, and I think they did a really good job with. BYU has a program within the university called Built for Life, and Built for Life specifically teaches players how to negotiate deals with different people who approach them for NIL. It teaches them how to handle that money. It teaches them warning signs when it comes to certain companies that might be predatory, that are coming towards them, trying to offer them like something in exchange for nothing, or putting them in compromising situations. And BYU, one of the things that I like, has like Built for Life partnered with Built Bar in order to do this, like so that they could pay for everything. And my thought process is, a lot of people, I was really concerned that like, you remember that story about the Ohio State QB who's leaving high school early, basically. Right. I was really concerned about that, because my thought process is, you're going to have a bunch of kids who are like, I don't need high school, I'll just skip out. And then what happens if they don't pan out? Because here's the thing. Like these walk-ons are a really good example. Before NIL, what's the chance that these walk-ons make it to the NFL? Very small.
They're basically losing money to play football at that point. 100%.
And even with NIL, right, without something like this happening, how many walk-ons are getting like deals with companies?
None.
Usually it's going to be star players on teams that have some sort of presence, right?
Yes.
And the interesting thing here is that because BYU has a process and a program to teach their players how to handle money and how to handle these contracts, Built for Life, like we're able to see the positive aspect of it and how it can do more than just pay one player on a team like $1 million, right, for going to school and playing football. It's everybody can benefit. Every single player here, think about that. In the course of 1 year, like think about like last year, these players were paying to go to school, and like they were like, football takes up a lot of time, right? Like it's hard to work a job, right? You typically need support, or you're getting like crazy amounts of student loans. And this year their school is paid for. Like imagine, like just thinking about that from like, you and I are both students, like how much that changes it. That changes a whole lot of things for you. And that it's a really positive side of NIL that I don't think a lot of people had seen before.
No, I just hope. My issue with free college has always been, if you don't work for some part of something, how much does it mean to you? I'm going to be willing to bet that there's a lot of kids on that BYU football team. I know the economy of Utah. There's going to be a lot of kids on that BYU football team that are not going to use that money to pay for school, not because they're inherently stupid, but because their families are not doing that bad. Like most of these kids come from pretty well-off places. My only worry is I hope that this money doesn't go to waste because their college is now free. I hope their college experience doesn't go to waste because it's now free. And I mean, that's the principle of anything. If you don't work for something, it doesn't mean as much. Granted, they're playing football, so I hope, and this is speculation, I don't know any of these kids personally. I'm just saying, as a principle, when you don't work for something personally, things are just given to you, they mean much less than when you have to pay for them and work for them yourself. So I just hope that that doesn't become an issue as far as it comes to free school.
I wonder how it is that they're like Built Bar is gonna take this, because when it comes to because they're paying for tuition, right?
Well,
And
I think they're giving them, because what I heard today when we did the show is that they're matching the cost of tuition. So the money's it's not directly a scholarship. It's going directly to the players. So if the players want to use it to pay for other things, they have every ability to do that. The money's just going to them, and I think they can choose what they do with it, as far as I understood the deal.
Okay, all right, because that would make a lot more sense, because my thought process was like with the student loan, right? What happens is you have like let's say like what was the average cost for like a BYU player for a semester? It's like $3,500 a semester if you're a member of the church.
Yeah.
And so with $3,500 a semester, like if you take out a loan, like a student loan for, let's say, theoretically $10,000, like with most loans, what happens is they pay the actual loan off, right? Like they pay the school, and then you get the remaining amount. And so that was just my question, was like, I wonder like if they're like paying for it, but if they're just giving them a lump sum of 10 grand, like I don't know that very many of these kids have ever held 10 grand in their hand. Like just like right there.
And I don't know how the deal's working out. I'm sure they're not getting it all at once. I'm sure. Well, I don't know how this deal is going to work out. I'm sure they get it at the beginning of the semester, and then they do whatever they want with it.
There are stipulations that I read that they need to appear at like certain company events or like certain like experiential events, like, and that they're going to be, like I said, I'm pretty sure I read that like they're going to have like the logos of Built Bar like on their practice helmets, which like is such an odd. I wonder how much, like this is something I've always wondered. You know how the NBA, right, came out and they said that, hey, you can like have like logos like sponsoring like on your team uniform.
Which I hate.
Like, not only is it something that I look at it and I'm like, ugh, that's gross, right?
Yeah.
Just because it makes the uniform look stupid.
Like soccer uniforms, I can't honestly tell you what FC Barcelona's, like, I guess I probably know what their logo looks like, but the thing that sticks out even more to me is the Fly Emirates or whatever, or Emirates Airlines or whatever. Like that's what I remember about their uniform more than their actual logo. Same with I think the Seattle Sounders, they have the Xbox logo or whatever. Like the game means less to me when you sell out, but also it's about money.
Well, and here's the thing, like I think like in the case, the two that you just brought up, they're effective. I can't
they are effective.
How many NBA, like, I'm trying to think of like different NBA like sponsors for the shirts. They're so small that I can't even tell. And
I know the Clippers are sponsored by Bumble, which I find really weird, but
that's hilarious.
Yes, like the dating app Bumble. Bumble has a little thing on the Clippers. That's a very LA thing to do.
That's very Clippers. But like my thought process is like the amount of money they're spending in order to get on that that uniform is insane. Like they spend stupid amounts of money. I wonder if it's I wonder if the return on investment is anywhere near worth it. And I wonder, like the same thing with like Built Bar. If you're like sponsoring, it'd be one thing if like you were getting yourself onto like BYU game helmets. That's one thing. Practice helmets.
Yeah. There's not that much. Look, like we scrap to get like good practice footage just for our show. I don't think there's that many people. Like I don't think ESPN is using that much BYU practice footage.
And yeah, I wonder, just looking at it, I don't know. It'd be interesting to get a look at the inside of these companies and figure out what their angles are, because I can understand it, right? Like Zach Wilson, right? Last year plays really well for BYU. Like you sign into NIL deals, like it works out really well for you because he's like a local celebrity. And like for example, like Jimmer Fredette, like it would make sense to me like at BYU, like if you got that. But outside of like really visible players, like talking about BYU, whoever the starting quarterback ends up being, if they play well, Tyler Algier, right, and like a couple receivers, and then maybe like Chaz Ayu and like a couple like players like on defense that are like in skill positions. But like if you're an offensive lineman, I don't know how much like just because, and this is criminal, but like we really don't talk about offensive linemen very much unless the quarterback's getting hit a hole. We usually don't talk about offensive linemen unless they suck.
Yeah, if we don't talk about them when they're doing their job. I think a lot of this is gonna come down to, because you're right, like unless you're a star player, like I think I would argue that 80% of the NIL money, I mean it's the 80-20 principle that exists everywhere. I would argue that 80% of the NIL money is going to 20% of the players, meaning
100%.
So like what's his name? I think Nick Saban said the other day that what's the kid's name at Alabama? Bryce
the backup
Young,
who's never even played.
Oh yeah, he's probably making money too. But Bryce Young, he's Nick Saban said he's already making close to 7 figures. And he hasn't started a football game yet, and he's also 5'11", which worries me a little bit. But that's a different conversation. I think a lot of it is going to depend on what does your community look like? Because I think with BYU it'll work because like every kid in Utah grows up, unless you're a Utah fan, and then if that's the case, then I don't know why you continue to breathe. But if you're like every kid in Utah grows up looking at BYU and like looking at all the BYU players being like, oh, that's so cool, like they're so cool. Like BYU players as a whole have a brand, but if you go to like Penn State or like State College where I used to live, like I live 20 minutes outside, and like I honestly, like most people don't know all of the Penn State players super well outside. Like it is a good community, but it's ultimately going to come down to, if you're not a star player, it's going to come down to what's the community like, because a lot of these guys, their deals are coming out through social media. Like they're posting on social media, and that's where the deals are at. Most of these kids are not getting commercials, and I think it'll be very interesting to see. We're going to have a very good, like what NIL looks like today is not what NIL is going to look like in 10 years because these companies are going to learn what their return on investment looks like. Like Built Bar is going to learn in about 2 years, probably maybe 2 to 5 years, whether or not this was a good choice and whether or not they're going to make a lot of money from this. And so, yeah, a lot of people are making a lot of money now, but I don't think it's going to be the exact same way. The money's either going to go up, or all these players are not going to get any of that money because they're going to realize, unless you're a star player, there's not that much return on investment for us. So why would we put that money into you?
Well, also, I think something that's going to be really interesting to watch with NIL is that NIL, like, inherently is going to be star focused. And so and so universities that are consistently good but don't produce polarizing or super hyper influential and personality driven stars aren't going to benefit as much. For example, like this is what I'll submit to you. Notre Dame's always good.
Yeah.
But how many of their players do you see like everywhere? Very, very like
I don't know a single person who's on that team right now, like if I'm being completely honest, because Ian Book I know got drafted and the tight end got drafted. So outside of that, like I don't know a single person. That's what I'm saying. Like it's only going to be a local thing for most of these guys.
Which I think is actually extremely positive, because I think if you make them national, like really, I don't know. It's not. I like I like the aspect of like it being local, because it's like you're getting paid as a local celebrity. When you are national, you're in the NFL, right? I like that aspect of it. Gives like kids an opportunity to be paid and like learn these skills on not a national, like the likelihood that they become Johnny Manziel, right?
Yeah.
And like kind of get lost in the spotlight is a lot less when it comes to specifically the money side. The fame side they still have to deal with, but like the money aspect, it's like it'll be very localized, and it won't be this thing where like people are working out deals with Capital One for like $30 million. You know what I mean? It won't be this,
most people it's not gonna be this way,
right? And I actually do think like I said, this is an extremely positive thing where it's like, okay, there's not a single player at BYU who will have to worry about anything if they're smart, right? If they're smart with their money, like they will not they're given the opportunity to not have to worry about anything except football, which is extremely people don't talk about this a whole lot. Like BYU, BYU had a thing a while ago where players were like, hey, like we don't feel like we eat enough, right? Like we don't feel like we are getting enough meals, right? Because they're trying to maintain a massive calorie load and they're trying to like maintain extremely good physiques, and it's really, really difficult, right? Whereas like now BYU feeds that like has an open buffet at all times that players are allowed to go and eat at, and I think that's a really good thing. And that's part of, you don't have to worry about eating, right? Like you now have to worry about playing football, and I think that's actually a really good thing for them, and especially for walk-ons. Man, it sucks. It's really hard.
It is, but for most of these guys, you hope that football doesn't become everything to them, because football is not going to last for forever. True. Like
for most of them.
Yes, and so the thing I like about this is now they can actually worry like the kids, because I understand if you're a scholarship football player, like it literally doesn't matter because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to go to class. Like I dated a girl whose mom was a professor at Penn State, and she was literally like, she's like, lengthening the college football playoffs wouldn't mean anything to me because like these kids don't come to my classes anyway. So
which
I'm not.
That's the really sad aspect of especially pre-NIL, and I'm not saying that this is a solution, because I think the solution is that these kids, when you go to university, if you're going there if you go there for a full 4 years and you're not drafted, like you need to get a degree that's worth something. Some of these kids, right, who are getting like degrees in physical education, I'm like, are you serious? Like 80% of the teams getting a degree in physical education and don't even show up to class and are averaging like a 2.9 or like a 3.0 barely.
Yes.
And you're like, no, like you are, especially because how many people do you think on at an average university, like actually let's just use BYU since we're already there. How many people do you think there's like 130 something players on that roster? How many kids do you think get drafted? Under 10.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Easily under 10. And most of them are probably either under 10.
Right. And so under 10 players are getting drafted. So for the rest of you who are now your school's being paid for, so 123 players, under 10 of you are getting drafted. Get especially since now like NIL allows you to like make money, you could pay for school. Get a degree that doesn't suck. Please.
Exactly. Like you and I aren't saying that college is for everyone, because I don't believe that it is. I think college is good for me because of what I want to do, but I don't think it's for everyone. But if you're going to go to college and you're going to get it paid for, at least do something with it, or use that money. Cause a lot of these scholarship players are now getting money, to go to school. If you know what you want to do and that's outside of going to school, then start that now. Get because you have that much money, you have $3,000 just sitting there for 3 months. Like, do something with it. So I'm with you. I think if you're gonna be at school, use it. You now have just an extra tool that you got for free that the rest of us don't get.
Especially those of you who every single player wants to play in the NFL. Not every single player will play in the NFL. If you don't think you're going to make it to the NFL, like if you're a walk-on and you were just playing for the love of the game, good on you. Use this money to get a really good degree and have someone else pay for it. Do you know how many people I'd put under the ground in order to avoid student debt?
Yeah, bro.
I would bury people, right? And
where do you go to school right now?
Right now?
Are you at school right now?
BYU.
Oh, okay.
Right, but my dad's still paying his student loans. You know what I mean? Like people, like student loans stay forever, right? And so like my wife and I, she's starting a program, like we have to like make a choice about that. And so like for those of you who are like are these college kids who BYU will not be the only like program to have this done, right? Especially since BYU's now set this standard. A lot of big universities that are way bigger than BYU and have more financial.
Yeah. The companies that are going to come calling to Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson after this and say, hey, we want to pay for all of your walk-ons, but we're not paying for everybody else. But we'll pay for your walk-ons so that we can look really good.
I'll put money on it right now, actually, for FedEx to either support Memphis or Tennessee. Like either one. Money that FedEx will do it.
And Coke is going to come calling to Georgia. And I don't know what's in Alabama or South Carolina, but I'm sure someone will come calling, and it's just going to be this big thing. So there are lots of issues, there's lots of solutions, but I pray that everyone uses this money for all good things, and I'm grateful that kids who don't have school getting paid for are getting it paid for. I do wish I just want to throw this in there before we end, because they were talking about how like hard it is to be a college athlete and all this stuff, because like especially the ones that are on the football team and don't have a scholarship also have to work. I'm like, those aren't the only kids at universities who have to work to pay for their school. So like, let's not just act like all of these kids, like there are kids who they're not there for sports, but they're there and they take 20 credits a semester. That's just as tiring as football. And let's not act like those kids also don't need money. They do. They just don't yet command certain value that the rest of these kids do.
Well, and let's set this like as like the standard like that Brett and I are talking about. We love that the kids are getting college paid for. We hope that more money comes in to help them with other things if they're not able to pay for them. We love seeing people succeed. We hope that the individuals who are there take advantage of it, and we also want to make like something, maybe not Brett, but like I would also want to say, as an individual who's in college, a lot of people make college hard.
Yeah, college is not that hard.
Right? Like there are aspects of it that are difficult because of the transition. Right. And I don't have anything like I'm not competing like on a football team on a national stage. So I'm not saying that I have that in my life, but there are a lot of difficult things that happen in college that people make harder because they do things that are stupid. I hope that these kids, right, that are given this resource don't do things that are stupid, because usually what happens when people do things that are stupid is they ruin it for everybody else. I hope that the NCAA and like local law doesn't have like a whole lot of overlapping control and like in limiting how much people can make, because I just think it becomes a mess. But I'm just saying, like, if you don't want it to be regulated, like heavily regulated, and you want the students to make money, those of you who are, don't do stupid crap, because you're going to ruin it for everybody else.
I 100% agree with you. Okay, so we've kind of beat this like a dead horse. Before we get into the rest of the stories for today, do you want to do the boot bracket?
Bro, so listen, I don't know if you've heard about this story with Kyrie Irving and his shoes.
These are some of the most disgusting shoes I've ever seen in my entire life.
Literally looking like, no disrespect to Shaq, dude, and I love like what he does, but they really be looking like some Shaq and ones.
I honestly think I might rather wear Shaq and ones.
Right, really though. And so what we're going to do boot bracket. And what we're going to do is there's going to be 3 different classifications that you can give. There's wear, there's buy, and then there's leave. And I have right here, I think 8 or 9 different pairs of sneakers. So you're going to like let me know. Some of them are good. Some of them I personally think are horrific. Sins against God and nature. And you can go ahead and tell me if you would wear these on the court or in everyday life, if you would keep these in your closet, or if you would actually, no, let's change this. We're going to have wear, keep, or burn.
Okay, so does keep mean like I buy them but I don't really wear them?
Yeah, sneakerhead.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so we got the LeBrons right here. These ones are his Space Jam shoes, and these ones are actually the LeBron 19s. They were unveiled with the Space Jam A New Legacy movie, and I just looking at it, they're interesting. I don't know, what do you think?
Okay, I saw these. So I've been on the Space Jam train my entire life. I've been on this train for the second movie ever since I found out about it. I think it was like in 2016 we first found out about it. And LeBron was wearing a different shoe, and then it was released in a different trailer that he was wearing these. I don't think I would wear them just because I've never been into like LeBron shoes. Some of them are a little stiff. I do like the cushioning in the bottom, but the tops are usually a little stiff. I honestly think they look sick. I love the air bubbles on the bottom. It's the one thing I wish I had in my Kyrie 3s that I don't. So I'd probably buy them, but I don't know. I'd keep them, but I don't know how much I would play in them.
All right. After that, we have the Curry Flow 8s, and Curry has an interesting,
get out of here with these Walmart looking shoes. Like, they really just look like they're not cool. They look, I have no disrespect about kids who have to wear Walmart shoes, because I remember having to wear really ugly basketball shoes back in the day when I was a kid. But like, don't try to build me a Walmart shoe and then sell it to me like it's LeBron's. They're not good looking. They're not cool. They look like you bought them off the rack at Ross.
Under Armour Curry Flow 8s retail from Under Armour directly at $160.
Yeah, nope, zero chance.
All right, the Dawn issue number 3s. These are Donovan Mitchell's signature shoes.
I was having this conversation with a kid at work the other day because I saw the new James Hardens, and they look like clown shoes, like legitimately. I know we've tossed that around.
You can't do
but
that.
Like,
That's exactly what I said.
The new Hardens look like clown shoes. Adidas, other than the Damian Lillards, hasn't made a good basketball shoe in I don't know how long. Stick to making Yeezys, because that's the only thing that you're good at right now. I understand that the boost in them is really nice. Their football cleats are also pretty decent, but like, they're comfortable, but they're so ugly. And if I don't like what I'm wearing, then I'm not putting them on my feet, regardless of how comfortable they are.
So I'm assuming for the Currys, burn, and same thing here, burn.
Yeah. Get rid of the Donovan Mitchells. Burn.
I definitely like, if I had to choose one, it would definitely be an earlier rendition. I did not like the 3 very much.
No, I heard that the earlier ones were cool.
The Giannis Zoom Freak 2s.
Okay, I love these. I hated the original Zoom Freak 1s. I know a lot of people liked them. I don't personally. The one issue I had with the Zoom Freak 2s is, like, I like to play basketball differently than I like, because I've always been this big, and so I like to play down on the block a lot, but I also like to run the court, and so I like to be able to feel like I can do both. My issue with these was they looked too big man for me, but I did see a lot of guards wearing them, and I really love the way they look. I love that the swoosh basically takes up the entirety of the shoe, and there's some pretty sick colorways, so I would probably keep these and wear them, because they're also, like, they don't look that much like a basketball shoe that you couldn't just wear them around to walk in. I'm not one of those people who does that with basketball shoes unless they're Jordans, but you could, and they also give me a Kobe Bryant feel to them that I really like. So yeah, I'd keep these.
Okay, wouldn't wear them, but you'd keep them?
No, I'd probably wear them.
Okay. The Kawhi New Balance shoes.
Okay. I think we all had the debate at the lunch table when we were kids about, like, what basketball shoes were cool. Like, I remember being in like 6th grade and we were all sitting around talking about who had the best shoe or whatever. And I remember that there was a man by the name of Matt Bonner who used to play for the San Antonio Spurs, and he was just like the definition of a stereotypical looking white boy, where he was just like 6'11". He was a power forward for the San Antonio Spurs back in the day, and he's the only I remember we would all make fun of him because he wore New Balance basketball shoes, and I remember trying to find them, and like, you couldn't, because New Balance really didn't make basketball shoes at the time. New Balance still doesn't make nice shoes. Kawhi's shoes are ugly. They're not nice. They might be comfortable. I don't know, but don't get anywhere near me with New Balances unless they're like the original, like the OG walking around ones that are kind of nice.
Okay. We're giving you a little bit of a throwback. ZO219 Big Baller brand.
Okay. So I dislike these for 2 reasons. First of all, they look like, well, first of all, they just don't look good. Second of all, they look exactly like the Paul Georges, the PG-13s or whatever they're called. I believe they're the PG-13 4s. They look exactly like them. They have that weird mid-strap thing going on. And also, why would I pay? You can't charge me $180 for a brand that I do not trust. I know we have this. There's this market now where you can just charge a lot of money for something and people immediately assume that it has high credibility. But I know what LeVar Ball is. These are literally just knockoffs of the Paul Georges, and the idea that Nike hasn't sued LeVar Ball for this blows my mind. I'm not ever wearing these. Get these away.
All right, and then to cap it all off, the new Kyrie 8s.
Okay, I pulled up a picture. So I saw a picture this morning when I walked into work. These look like, you know how there's some people who look like they were born at the age of 30? And I know that sentence doesn't make any sense. I mean exactly what I'm saying. Like there's women who are born with just like wrinkles on their face and they look gross, or there's dudes that are born with hairline and glasses and it's just a total mess. Like they look like they came out the womb as a middle-aged person. That's how I feel about this shoe. Maybe somebody wore it for a long time before they took this picture. I don't know, but it looks gross. I hate the way the tongue is. They look like they tried to mix. They have this weird the thing on the laces to hold them in place. They look exactly the same as some Adidas shoe. It looks like you took 4 different shoes, cut them into pieces, and then tried to fit them together and make it look cool. Probably some of the ugliest shoes I've ever seen, and I don't blame Kyrie Irving for being upset with Nike that he's gonna make him wear them.
Leading that into here's a conversation, like 2 things I want to like say here when it comes to Kyrie. I know we want to say that Kyrie is like a super principled person, right? Like very like, for him, he's always going off about how like life is about more than basketball, and Kyrie does really charitable things off the court. He does.
He just built a well in Africa, I think.
Pakistan. But like he built a well, right, for underprivileged communities, and like Kyrie like does good things. Here's my problem. Kyrie, right, gets on Instagram, right, and trashes these shoes, and he hates them. And listen, I agree, Kyrie. I get you, dude.
They're gross.
They're gross. They suck. And then he deletes it and then releases a statement where he says, "I regret calling them trash." And Kyrie's thing, right, has also been about, and we can like segue this like into the other segment. But Kyrie's always been this thing where he's like, "I'm my own individual. I'm not controlled by corporations," right?
Yeah.
Which is why he went on
stand
my
up
kids.
to the man.
I stand up to the man, which is why I'm like on the flat Earth thing, right?
Yeah.
And which is why I'm like, you know, like burning sage walking around the court. Like Kyrie's always been like, "Oh, I'm an individual. I'm an art."
Yes.
That's his thing. I'm an artist, right? I'm not for the corporation. I'm not for the man. I'm for the artist.
He's an individual.
Right. And then he goes and the second, because you know what happened. Here's exactly what happened. Kyrie posted it. Within 15 minutes, his agent called him and is like, "What natural freak is wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you? I have Nike on the phone and they're threatening to sue you," right? Like the whole 9 yards. And then he posts this milquetoast, "I'm just an artist and I was just trying to vocalize like how I'm." No, dude, the shoes suck. Take a print. Like if you're a principled person, like it's the thing you always say, die on the hill, right? It doesn't mean that your views can evolve, right? Your views can evolve and you can change your views if new information comes about. But if you're on the hill, die on the hill. Right? If you're a principled person, be a principled person. Do you want to know? I'm sorry. It makes Kyrie look like a massive sellout. It makes him look like a massive sellout when he's like, "No, I'm an artist and I can't believe they would release these shoes without my permission." And then he's like, "Actually, I think the shoes are just fine and we're working on it." You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. It makes you look like a massive sellout. And we can like flow this. Like we were going to have a conversation about like Deshaun Watson and how he's frustrated with the media and all of the excesses that come with being a professional athlete. I think you know a little bit more about this one, and it's just I don't understand. I get this is my mom would always talk about this. When I had a problem, she'd be like, "You can totally be mad at me, 100%. You can be mad at me. You don't get to yell at me."
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And
my
that
mom
was
said the
difference.
same thing.
I totally get Deshaun Watson. It's probably freaking annoying to have someone, especially like these goofy journalists and paparazzi that are following you everywhere, and they live their life on the edge, just like basically stalking you legally, attempting to like know everything about you because they are just living at the edge of every single breath you take because that's how they make their living. And I think it's kind of pathetic, but whatever. But listen, you're a professional athlete. That like it's literally in the contract because it's not something that there are certain things at work that I don't like doing. It's in my contract that I do them because
exactly.
Otherwise I wouldn't want to do them. People yell at me for a living, basically, right? I work in finance, right? I help people deal with loans. Like people are always mad at me. You know what I mean? And I don't love that, but it's part of my contract to help these people, and not only to help them, but to like help them to overcome things without being rude. you can be mad all you want at the paparazzi. I totally get you.
You can feel however you want to feel.
Yes.
Yeah, a couple things. So for everyone, what Jackson's referring to is there's a video on the internet of Deshaun Watson is walking up to practice. He is at his workplace. This is not him being on the street and people coming up to him trying to take pictures of him. I'm pretty sure this is
not at the movies.
No, he's not at his house. I'm pretty sure, like, if when I'm at BYU TV, if they want to come and take my picture, like, or they want to come and video the studio, like, I don't get to say anything about that other than I quit my job. That's the only thing I get to say because I'm on their time and they're paying me. So Deshaun Watson is at practice. I'm pretty sure this was one of the social media people who was videoing him because I've seen a lot of videos of like players walking out to practice and they ask him this question. I'm sure this girl was just out here doing her job, and Deshaun Watson goes off and complains that he doesn't understand why it has to be like this and why they have. He said it's the same beep all the time. I'm with you. This is the same issue that I had with Marshawn Lynch when I'm just here so I don't get fined thing. Look, dude.
Which is, by the way, iconic. It's iconic. We're not saying that we don't think it's any less funny.
No.
It's hilarious.
But my issue with it was, look, I understand if you don't want to talk to the media. I do. But here's, like, Deshaun, here's your thing. The money that you make, the money that anyone makes is directly, exclusively correlated to what your value is. In terms of, like, how much money you make that company is how much, like, that determines how much they're willing to pay you. So your value comes from people paying money from seeing you do a certain thing. You provide a certain service and then you get paid for it. That service is people watch you play football. If that makes you feel like a zoo animal, I'm sorry. Like, if you want to be a professional athlete, you're essentially just a reality TV star. That's all you are. You're just competing to see how good you are. And I'm not saying that it's an easy job, but when it comes down to it, like, it's essentially just reality TV. Like, you're not getting paid because you threw 40 touchdowns. You're getting paid because lots of people want to watch you because you threw 40 touchdowns. And so you don't get...
Also, one more thing. If you're mad, you should be pissed beyond belief at the Players Association, because that's where it comes from. They negotiated with the Players Association on, like, the rules surrounding, like, players doing media coverage. That's argued, like, with the Player Association. So the paparazzi and, like, the media are always going to be there, and it's because the Player Association has negotiated it. So if you're angry at somebody, it's not your team. It's not even, like, in, like, your player, like, it's part of the player contract because it was negotiated between the NFL and the Players Association. It isn't even a Houston Texans thing. It, like, you were talking about, like, Marshawn. Marshawn had to do it too. It's not like a team thing. It's you are a part of the Players Association, and this is part of your obligation.
When we do a lot of live interviews, and we do a lot of pre-recorded interviews on Sports Nation, and the worst thing is interviewing someone who doesn't give you a good interview. Like, you're therefore not an entertainer. And as a professional athlete, you are just an entertainer. It would be like me showing up to watch Kevin Hart do a comedy show and him just sitting up there and being like, I don't want to talk about it, or I don't want to do the show. Like, I'm just sitting on the stage because I have to get paid. You wouldn't come back to see him. And it's the same thing with these athletes. It's like, look, dude, I understand that you don't like cameras being on you all the time. But first of all, this was not a surprise. You knew this. You watched sports growing up. So, like, if you don't want to do this, then don't get paid to do it. Second of all, this is the big kicker. We've been talking about this from a general athlete standpoint. Deshaun, I hate to break it to you, but it is not anyone's fault. And this is Uncle B coming for you, giving you the whole consequences. You can't have your cake and eat it too talk. This is me coming at you, Deshaun. You don't get to, whatever choices you make, you get to live with the consequences. I've said that ad nauseum. You don't get to have 22 accusations of sexual misconduct and then be upset about attention and exposure. You made this choice yourself. You get to lay in that bed. If you want to make money, you have to be okay with being a product. You are a product. Like, when Apple makes money because they sell iPhones. Like, I don't care that much about the CEO of Apple and what he wants to do. The product I'm receiving from Apple is the phone itself. I have it right here. The product I'm receiving from the NFL is getting to watch you do something that you're really good at. And if you're more entertaining, I'm more inclined to watch you, because there's so many athletes who we love to watch their interviews because they give great interviews. They're very entertaining. They say funny things. Your value now goes up in my book. And if it goes up in my book, that means the NFL wants, or the team wants to pay you more because they want to keep you, because otherwise some other team is going to keep you because they know you're just as entertaining anywhere else.
Speaking of the value going up, what do you think of this Kawhi signing a 4-year deal with the Clippers? What do you think? Because I think I've talked about it before, but like, I don't. It's a 1 year. It's a 1 year thing of punishment for the Clippers, and then it's a rental, right? And Kawhi didn't even make all the money that he could have made. So I don't know. He signed for like 4 years. Couldn't he have done that beforehand instead of like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think this just comes down to, how do you feel about Kawhi Leonard? Like, where do you regard him? I'm not saying he's not a phenomenal basketball player, because he is. But first of all, let's not act like the boy hasn't dealt with injuries. Okay? So that's a little bit of a strike. And if you're really good at a lot of other things, you can you can overcompensate for the things that you're not good at. So if you want to take that off his record because he's amazing at basketball, fine. But here's the other thing. He didn't get hit that hard that he tore his ACL or his MCL or whatever was in his knee. So that should be a little bit of a concern to you. I think, here's the other thing. Kawhi, you have to have a very comfortable superstar to match with him. Someone who knows how to play their role very well. And Paul
Not
George,
to beat you on the nose, but Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry is what you would need.
Yes, exactly. Kyle Lowry knows exactly what he is, and he plays his role really well. That's why the championship worked out in Toronto. I don't think, though, if the swap ends up being for Kyle Lowry instead of DeMar DeRozan, if DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry are on that team, they don't win a championship, because those two don't know how to play together. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, like, I think what they're deciding here is, if I had to guess, they're saying we want to tie ourselves to Kawhi, not to Paul George. I think Paul George, I don't think Paul George makes any sense for him to stay in LA, because they don't work well together, which was the same reason I didn't want Luka to play with Kawhi. I don't think they would fit well together. I think Kawhi is a very good basketball player, but he's also really moody, which is not something I like. He chooses when he wants to and when he doesn't want to show up to games, which I don't like. And I mean, if you're the Clippers, I think I don't have any problem with you paying him, because you want to stick to what you know works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, except it is broke right now. But I think they understand the brand that is the Clippers right now, and that he is that brand. And basically, since Paul George, DeAndre Jordan, and Blake Griffin were all in their primes, he is the best thing that they've had. I think you're overpaying for him a little bit, because I don't think he's worth that much. And if I had the opportunity to get him on my team, the team I'm a fan of, I wouldn't take him. I wouldn't want him. There's other people I'd rather have than Kawhi Leonard.
100% agree. Also, I wanted to touch on this before we were heading out. With the Cowboys and the Dak Prescott thing, now that we're talking about injuries and how they affect the team, I mean, I agree with your assessment. Like, if that team is Dak, right? Dak is that team.
That's the brand.
Right? If he's not in it, right? Like, it is the Washington football team. It's their season to lose. Right? Like, it is all theirs. Especially if they can figure out a quarterback. That's a dangerous team. That's a scary team. But what the heck is going on with this whole Dak Prescott thing?
Well, so here's the thing. So they sent out this tweet, right? And I don't know if a lot of people have seen it. I don't know. Have you seen the tweet?
I haven't.
Okay, so let me read it to you real quick, because this is why I'm concerned. I wasn't concerned really that he was having the MRI. It was the tweet that concerned me. So he said, so the Dallas Cowboys tweeted, quote, "It's not a setback." Then they hit enter and go to a different line, which I find very weird, because they want us to read it in like this pattern. So they go, "It's not a setback, period. and it's not a reason to worry, period. And then another enter, so they dropped another bar, and then they go, but QB Dak Prescott is planning on getting another MRI. First of all, this doesn't scream to me like this feels
Someone
like
got
this
fired.
is either
Someone
this
got
seems like it was
fired.
somebody's first day on the job, because this just isn't
Someone
how you
got
run.
fired.
I think so, because this doesn't seem like how you run a team's social media account. I'll tell you this story just real quick. So there's this running joke in my family about this story about my dad. But when my dad was, I think he was 6 years old, he they had a fish tank somewhere, and my dad took a fish out of this fish tank, I think, or he was out fishing. Either way, he brings this fish in the house and he puts it in his pocket. And he walks up to my grandma and he goes, and she goes, "How are you doing?" And he goes, "I don't have a fish in my pocket." And I was like, and he's 6, right? There's one time, I won't mention names because I think he listens to the podcast, and I don't know if a lot of people know the story. But one time I was with this friend. We're driving home from Portland. I'm sleeping in the back seat, and I wake up, roll up into the front seat, and we get pulled over like 5 seconds after I woke up. Pull over by a state trooper in Portland. It's like midnight. We had a whole crazy mess where we almost got arrested a couple times before and ended up staying at a really sketchy hotel, whatever. So it's been a long couple days, and this cop pulls us over. And he goes, "Hey, sir, have you been drinking?" And my friend goes, "No, but I was on my phone and driving with my knee." And not to mind that, he was also doing double the speed limit. So I'm just like, first, like, you didn't have to say any of those things, and none of us would be worried. But now that you've said those things, I'm worried. Everyone has that friend who you're always cleaning up messes for, or he always needs something from you. And when people tell you not to worry, that usually means that there is reason for you to be worried. This is the other thing that confuses me. Okay, so he's getting an MRI. He's getting an MRI on his shoulder, on his throwing shoulder. Do you remember what his injury was last year that kept him out of the season?
Tell me.
He basically snapped his leg. Like, I've felt this before, so I don't even like talking about it. But essentially, like, his knee popped out of the socket and twisted. So like the bottom of his leg was rotated at like a 45-degree angle, different than what the rest of his leg was at, and basically broke his knee, broke his leg. Explain to me if he needed an MRI on that, I understand that. He hasn't been using his arm in a whole year. So why are we just now hearing about the fact that he needs an MRI on that shoulder? And look, again, I'm not saying that there has to be something wrong with it, because sometimes you just get MRIs to check things out. But first of all, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And like Stephen A. Smith always says, somehow, some way they will let you down. We know that. Second of all, why are you telling me not to be worried? Like, why is this a story if there's nothing to be worried about? And the Cowboys have proved to me that I should be worried because you're not telling me everything.
Also, point of contrast, when Carson Wentz got injured, they announced that Carson Wentz was injured, and then they announced a time frame. Now, Carson Wentz is apparently supposed to be back for week 1 because it's extremely encouraging, is what they're saying, that they probably won't have to worry about it, just according to the most recent reports. They let everybody know what's going on. They didn't try and mess with expectations. They just said,
yeah, and they didn't try to oversell it to us is the other thing. Because now we're all like, oh, sick, he's gonna be back. But with the Cowboys, you're like, oh yeah, Dak's gonna be 100% for week 1. And now we're like, oh wait, actually he might. So you oversold us, and now you're underselling us. Whereas with the Colts, it was they undersold us, and now they're just selling us.
Right, and when it comes down to it as well, like when Carson Wentz comes back week 1, right? If he's a little rusty, Colts fans, myself, will understand a little bit because we're like, yeah, dude was hurt, and if he like isn't in there the whole game and they put in Ellinger or Eason, like we understand, right? Especially like, you don't you don't destroy the cash cow on week 1.
Yeah,
not a good idea. If you're the Cowboys, it's just when it comes to the Cowboys, it's always something, and you know that person who always needs to be in the middle of something. Everything is total. There's someone that's totally fine, right? The relationship is totally fine, and then the boyfriend or the girlfriend, right? Not to like overuse like the relationship analogy that we use, but like, there's always someone who is sitting there with their significant other. Everything is going well, everything's fine, and then they're like, "We haven't fought in a minute. Now seems like a good time. And they bring up something every
That's
single time.
That's also true.
Right? It's something that happens. I don't know what it is, especially
the
high
Cowboys
schoolers.
always have this need to be in the media, and even if it's for the wrong reasons. And usually I'm the type of guy who there's no such thing as bad publicity, but to me this is bad publicity.
I wonder if it was Jerry Jones. I wonder if Jerry went off of his medication and just like got on Twitter and just like he was just popping Xanaxes and just decided, yeah, this is a good idea.
Dude, drunk Jerry sounds like a good time.
Dude, honestly, Drunk Jerry sounds like that's a number one. Drunk Jerry is a really good band name, but also like that's a hilarious movie. Like just following Jerry Jones with the camera while drunk, like even put it like 10, 15 years ago, that's a freaking movie. That's hilarious.
Oh, you mean Hard Knocks this season?
Pretty much.
Oh, look, all I'm saying is the people that you should be worried about lying to you are the ones who are always trying to convince you that they're not lying to you. Because you can tell when kids are lying because they usually try to add 15 unnecessary details to make the lie longer so that it seems like they know what they're talking about.
Actually, something as well that they're having a conversation, right, with Dr. Phil. And I know a lot of people laugh about that. Dr. Phil actually is like a certified professional, right? Like the I don't watch the show. I think it's super extra.
Cash me outside. How about that?
Cash me outside. How about that? But he actually talks about lying, right? When people lie, like the certain things that they do, and there's not one certified way. There's a whole bunch of little signs, right, that like help you understand when someone's lying to you or lying about something. And one of them is like an appeal to a higher divine authority. People who are always saying, I swear to whatever they believe in, right? It wasn't me.
Interesting.
When they appeal to the divine authority, that's a big sign. Whenever they try and appeal to familiarity, you know me, I wouldn't do that. If somebody who's usually has like somebody who's stolen, right, will say, they'll appeal to their character, how they usually are. And the reason that they'll do that is because they're not being that way right now. So they have to appeal to something that you know and that they know that they can rely on as compared to what they can't rely on right now because they know that they did it. Same with like, I swear to insert like whoever you like, whatever you believe in. Like that's something that they'll appeal to because they need somebody. There's something external. Right. And so when it comes to like the Cowboys, there are just so many red flags where you're like, it's not that bad. This isn't a setback.
Yeah, don't worry.
But
it's not a setback. Nobody was saying it was a setback. Why are you telling me it's not one?
I don't know.
It'd be like if you showed up on a date with a girl and she goes, I'm not a dude. And it's like, well, yeah, I didn't ask that, but now I think I might.
I feel bad for Cowboys fans. They really, like, they just get put through, like, cardiac arrest every single offseason, no matter, even if they're not anywhere close to, like, Super Bowl contention. They just, it's like being a Packers fan.
But they think they're going to win the Super Bowl every year. Like, they think that, what's his name? It is fun to make
fun of them for that.
DiNucci is going to win them a Super Bowl. My problem is, look, first of all, if he's having shoulder issues right now that it's sore, even if nothing's torn, if his shoulder has issues, you have a problem. Because last year, even when Dak was healthy, the only way you were winning games, Dak was averaging like the games he was healthy, he was averaging close to 400 yards a game, which is dope. But that means you're throwing the ball nearly 30 to 40 times a game. That's not good because your defense is going to put you in so many shootouts because they're non-existent. Even if it comes back that like nothing's torn, something is sore and there's an issue here. There's something we don't know. And he's going to probably end up tearing something because your defense is going to cause you to be in so many shootouts. And Ezekiel Elliott is not going to be reliable for you.
It's like the whole Anthony Davis thing, right? With Anthony Davis, it's like he is injured and you don't rehab injured while you're playing. You need to stop playing. And that's why playing him when they did was I was like, if you lose him, you're getting bounced at any point. And so why lose him and potentially have a problem like coming into the next year? Let him rehab. Even if he has to miss the entire series, let him rehab, especially with a groin injury. Same thing with Dak. Throwing arm isn't going to get any better. You know what I mean? Especially during playing time. If he's going to rehab, it is right now. And so allow him to rehab and potentially come into the season a little bit rusty as compared to this thing where you're saying, oh, yeah, we're going to risk the entire season in the first 4 weeks, and it doesn't get any better from there. The odds that he gets injured every single week goes up if you do this.
Yeah, if you're a Cowboys fan, you should definitely be worried. Look, we're not guaranteeing. It's not a guarantee that he is injured. Maybe on the off chance they're just checking his shoulder to see if everything's okay. But I do find it very suspect that we're finding out that there's something wrong with the shoulder when the thing that was injured was your leg.
Also, when was the last time that you knew the Cowboys to be so cautious that they were going to hold out one of their players? Like on the side
But
of
the
caution.
thing is, you should be, because he's now the second highest paid player in all of football, and he's the highest paid player ever in Cowboys history. You should be nursing this boy like a golden goose, because if you break it, you just sent so much money down the drain, which actually, now that I say it out loud, sounds like something that the Dallas Cowboys would do.
100%. Jerry Jones, overpay and then underperform.
Classic. Well, people, that is the show today. Like we talked about yesterday, we're going to do, probably Saturdays are going to be reserved most for like culture talk and things like that. So we're going to talk a lot more about whether or not we should listen to pro athletes and what makes people qualified and just culture things in general. So yeah, y'all have a good one. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with us.
See you, everybody.